I don't know, if we were going to throw the ball around, it was going to be like Cinderella. We were going to have a party.
That's right.
Yeah, it was less Cinderella. It was less Cy Young and more Cinderella at that point. I'm so glad you're here. This was a long time in the making. I've been talking about you on here. I've been breadcrumbing the fact that you were going to be coming on to talk because, a lot of the times I was either doing solo episodes or I was having people that I know now in my life, other comedians I work with and things like that. So usually when I started out, I say, where did we meet? Do you remember the first time we met? So I'm going to start that same question. Do you remember the first time we met?
See, we're going back into the memories a little bit.
Yeah. So for a lot of the other people, it's like us, it was like a year ago or it was like 6 months ago. For us.
So the first time in my mind,
that's what I want to know.
We're going back about 24 years or so. I'm thinking Sacred Heart High School.
Yeah, it must have been eighth grade.
Right. And I probably...
So it must be 1996 into 97.
Okay. And probably that day, this is when I didn't know how to tie a tie. I probably had a...
You knew where I was going. You cut me off.
I probably had the clip-on tie.
You cut me off. I can't believe you didn't let me tell that story.
Which I don't know why that tie has gone out of vogue. It's very quick. It's very utilitarian. And it gets the job done. So
there's going to be a lot of inside information today, so I'm going to be footnoting some of you today because so we met at a Catholic school that I had been attending, and I went to 7 different schools. How many did you go to? Because was it just Pittston before that?
At least 10 different public schools.
From like preschool through
when we met in 8th grade in Catholic school in Carbondale, Pennsylvania.
So. And was this your first Catholic school, Sacred Heart?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
prior to that was public schools.
Before that, and you could wear whatever.
Anywhere, all over the valley.
So we had to have like a uniform. And basically it was, by the time we were in 8th grade, I think we were allowed to wear our own tie. Had you come like earlier, it was even more stock. Like you had the clip-on was stock up until like 5th grade. You pretty much, and then as you grew or whatever, then you could start getting like the tie that you tied. But it was the same tie. Like it was a generic uniform tie. And then in 7th and 8th grade, you got to show your personality, like by Looney Tunes or like the Three Stooges.
See, I didn't have personality then.
Steve shows up in a suit to school, and we're like, who is this kid sitting over in the bleachers in a suit with his hair? Because you had your hair like parted to the side, like you looked like you were auditioning for like a news anchor.
Well, I was getting my career started. I'm an early starter.
You are an early starter.
Wait, so tell me this. You all didn't wear suits. So that was like an extraordinarily... What we did was we had one suit coat that we just hung terribly on the hook in our locker so that when Mr. Barlow came around, we would throw it on, and when he wasn't, you just shove it in your locker. This is a revelation. So that's why I was
getting pressed it every day.
I was getting funny looks, I think, that first couple of days because I was wearing that
navy blue suit you had on.
Right, pressed with my clip-on tie, white Oxford shirt.
White Oxford shirt. Yes, that's
now
it.
I understand some of the teasing that day. I am glad that it took 25 years for me to get why were they making fun of me.
And it's funny for me because that was like, it was like Shawshank. Like, and it's like if I was like Tim Robbins and I came in and then the first day everybody's like fresh meat. Like now I had been institutionalized by then because I had come in 3rd grade. So I'd been there 4th. I left in 4th briefly, but I came back in 5th, 6th, 7th. So I'd been there now 3 years, and you were the next first guy to come in. So I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not the new guy anymore. So like I was all amped up on it because I was like, oh yeah, like somebody else is the new person.
And that's where we that's where we got our start because you warmed up you saw potential in our relationship.
Oh my! Do you remember when
you weren't using that language in 7th grade?
No, I was not. I was not that eloquent. I would argue I wasn't eloquent until probably after we started hanging out more. But I remember the thing I remember the most was we started. The reason you and I started talking wasn't in class because you were too busy like listening and taking notes. But I would say AOL, Instant Messenger, because I would go to at that point in my life, my dad was back like every other weekend. I would go to. He had an apartment in Simpson, and AOL was the big thing. So like we didn't ever. He and I never did anything together. We just took turns who got to go upstairs and be on AOL. And so, like, when it was my turn on AOL, I'm like, and Dan's my producer today. He has no idea what we're talking about because AOL. Do you have any concept of AOL? Okay,
let's not cut him short.
But like when you signed on back then, it was a process. You had to make sure nobody was on the phone line. You had to make sure that the phone wasn't busy, and then it did the little crackling. And
that's right, the modem.
Then the only thing that happened was either email, instant message, chat rooms, or those channels. Remember the channels? AOL had channels, and I guess it really just led you to articles.
We are dusting off a lot of neurons right now, and I think the dust is falling off my brain.
It wasn't like now with like ChatGPT and Google. Like it was. This was like the beginning stages of. This was like the caveman era of this whole process. And that was our thing. We got each other's screen names on AOL, we were instant messaging.
And I think I was Steve465.
You were Steve465.
And you were correct me if I'm wrong. J Yoder 8338.
There 388. I was John Doe 3883.
John Doe. Okay.
John Doe 3883.
And it is interesting that we advanced and developed our relationship over that little box and type into each other.
That's how we got to the
in the
thing
90s.
where we first met was making a play date through AOL Instant Messenger. Because you remember what you said to me? Do you remember the line that I'm going to be talking about? Why?
I think I know where you're going.
So he invited me over for a sleepover, and his pitch, the pitch was
that you can come over to the ranch.
He had a ranch, and
now this is the beginnings of me being a storyteller because it definitely wasn't a ranch.
You're like, we can hit balls around the ranch.
You were probably picturing galloping horses.
Yeah, you did it like a summer camp brochure. You're like, there's racquetball, and there's like we can hit balls around the ranch. I'm like, we're gonna hit balls around the ranch.
We're gonna play bocce ball.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And it was basically you just had a lot of land in the back that was like hilly and like
that's right
woods, but you did have the basketball court next to it, the tennis court, and the baseball field
for that the town had. Yeah. Down off the property,
right next door.
That's right.
And then there was a cemetery across the street too.
Did we? Yes. Did we actually hit golf balls on one of those early times?
I don't think we did because I got there and I was like, this isn't what the brochure said was going to be here. The brochure lied to me. I was like, when I went to Resines College, they're like, we're close to Philly. No, you're not. Okay, stop it. Stop telling people that.
Hey, you got to do good marketing.
It was good marketing.
If you do good marketing, you get engagement and you get people to follow you.
Well,
I was thinking that, and then
there were a lot of pros to the McConnell Ranch. I will say because the first sell was that we went to skate away. I think we all met up. Our parents all dropped us off. It was me, you, and Greg, I think, Bonomo.
That's right, in Taylor, Pennsylvania. And this is northeast Pennsylvania that we're in.
Yes.
A little north of Scranton.
Dan, did you ever go to a roller skating rink as a kid? Okay, sorry. So that holds up. How old are you, Dan?
26.
26. Oh, okay. He's a baby. But so we went. The big thing then was to go roller skating. It was either you walk around the mall or you go to a roller skating rink. And that was cool. I remember I wore an Emmitt Smith jersey. I remember wearing an Emmitt Smith jersey and a backwards hat.
I mean, dude, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool because the 90s. That was the 90s. That was like the Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, like. And
Emmitt Smith was a really great football player.
Yeah, people are like, but people always knock me for that. I'm like, listen, I was raised by an all gay family. People are like, what's it like having a gay dad? I'm like, well, we talked about sports. Like, you're like, your dad's like, I'm an eagle. My dad's like, I'm a bear. And I'm like, Dad, you've never been to Chicago. I was like,
I don't. Your father, no knowledge of football whatsoever.
Yeah, no, dude. Like, if we were gonna play, if we were gonna throw the ball around, it was going to be like Cinderella. We were going to have a party.
That's right.
Yeah, it was less Cinderella. It was less Cy Young and more Cinderella at that point. But yeah, so it was whatever was popular was what I was choosing.
That was a good baseball reference that you threw in there too. Yeah.
Less Sandlot, more Cinderella.
But yeah, we did. We did the skating. I remember that. And then one thing that brought us together was playing high school golf and playing the local.
That's right.
Courses in Pennsylvania, which were a little bit more affordable. I think you pay $8 for 9 holes, and we would play golf together.
Yeah,
and at least I'll speak for myself, horrible at the game.
You were good. What are you talking about? This kid was districts. He played for districts. I didn't play much. The only reason I had played before that is my mom had a friend who played, and like she took me to like a garage sale in Carbondale, and got me these old clubs. In this old bag that looked like it was made of a carpet, but then we would play. Then we would hit like the practice balls, like the little wiffle balls and like.
Yeah.
But you were always really good, so I was like trying to like, and I had good hand-eye coordination, so like I could like
You're being very kind.
You were good.
I think this is like a revision of a memory, but I appreciate.
He had a USGA tag on his bag. He subscribed to a membership of the United States Golf Association. You don't do that if you're not like. And you had a little counter on your you were like counting your strokes, and you like had that. You keep the tea in your mouth because it was gonna like give you some kind of knowledge, but it was really just giving you pesticide poison and filtering into your brain.
I think that's what ultimately happened.
Remember, so in Spanish class,
yeah.
You remember what we did in Spanish class? We had it was 1999, and I know it was 1999
Yep.
because we planned barbecue 99. So instead of paying attention in Spanish class, we drew out a map of all the activities we were going to do after. It was so wholesome. Like this was like there was no drugs being done. There was no this was just wholesome. Pure childhood, and it was like we're like, oh, we're going to play what was it, lawn tennis? Because we got the bat. You would send your dad to Kmart to get like.
For context, yeah, we basically were planning a day where we would hang out and get together. And if I remember right, we invited people, except nobody showed up. So it was barbecue.
I was going to skip over that part.
It was barbecue 99 for two.
That's right. It was party of two.
I will say for us, a great bonding.
It was a great bonding moment. I'll tell you, because everything we did, you didn't need more than two.
Lawn tennis.
Lawn tennis,
right?
We did tennis, real tennis, basketball.
Yep.
And then we did home run derby. We did baseball.
That's right.
So we had it all
at the so-called
ranch,
which was basically a small house in Archibald with a little property and some woods around it.
I would never forget that.
No horses.
Because you go upstairs, because basically the bottom was like garages or whatever, but over the top, and then you had a little tiny back porch, walk right into the kitchen, which then had like a laundry room like straight ahead. There was the fridge. Then like you walked into like a little hallway thing, which is where like the front room, your dad's Y2K like storage closet. And that also was Eddie's room for a period of time. Your dad's room and then the bathroom. Do you remember that? When he was storing ramen noodles in there in 1999?
Yes. Yes. Hey, Y2K was real.
Y2K was
Conan
real.
O'Brien did a bit on it.
It was real. It was real. No, that was funny. And then we affectionately referred to your dad as Papa Smurf.
Papa Smurf, which I think was probably related to his height, right? And maybe a little bit of his demeanor.
Yeah, but like Papa Smurf was like the
Dad,
patriarch.
I'm sorry. I don't think you knew that was your nickname.
Oh, no. That's all. You didn't know that?
I don't believe so, but
well, it came from a place of love.
It did.
Because I would always love, because he would come in and talk. Like, dads didn't talk to kids. Like, if they did, they were yelling at you. But like, he would come in and tell us his ideas. He'd be like, I got these ideas.
Yes.
Remember the Honest Garage? I'm still behind the Honest Garage.
We were at this time, about 12 to 13 years old, and he would speak to us like we were 40 to 50 years old. Right? And that's a Papa Smurf.
That's great.
Yeah, the Honest Garage. He was going to have an honest car business because he was tired of getting ripped off.
And they were all going to wear name tags. It was Honest Rob, Honest Dan.
And if you think about it, that's actually a good idea.
I love that idea. I love that idea.
It's a really good idea.
And every once in a while, your brother was around. So classic, like I was an only child. So like he had an older brother. And Eddie's like how much older?
10 years older.
10 years older. So like when you're like 13 and the older brother's 23, like that's cool. Like that's classic cool.
And in contrast to the clip-on tie wearing brother with the fine press suit going to Catholic school, my brother was definitely a cool Gen Xer. Much cooler than this.
It was classic. It was like
very cool.
A sitcom in the making.
He had a little sports car. He'd be playing The Doors, Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
Like this was the cool guy. This was
That was
absolutely
every friend needs to have a cool older brother, and I needed that because I didn't have like I didn't have any reference for that. I didn't have any like siblings around. So like that was so cool because I saw that in sitcoms. I'm like, oh, this is like all the sitcoms I watch.
And I think that's another reason that you and I drew closer is that you were looking. I don't want to speculate, but I think some brotherhood.
You can speculate,
right? A little bit of brotherhood.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's
funny?
Where we had that, and that's where to get. To kind of say that's where we started we were studying together, we were learning together, we were playing a little golf, we were doing sports.
I can't wait.
These are things that I think you...
That's right. I was craving. I needed that in my life at that time.
Yearning for it. And then for me, I mean, Eddie was a young adult, so he was gone a lot. I was alone, right?
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then that gave us some
We
opportunity
just kind of filled the. It's funny
Right.
because yesterday when you flew in and like I was prepping the girls for you coming, and because Katie had to give up her playroom, which she was fine with, by the way.
Very sorry.
But she's still fine with. She's got her own. She's fine. She got too many toys. I'm so grateful to throw a bunch out when she wasn't looking.
I can offer some bribes.
That's fine. No, you're fine. She's like,
Okay.
She's like, why'd you call him Uncle Steve? And I was like, well, because Daddy doesn't have any brothers. Like, Mommy has sisters. So I was like, he's like the closest thing I have to a brother. And she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. She's so funny because she was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. She just said she has questions, but she's kind of ditzy. Like, I hope she marries rich. But I feel like she's she's super ditzy. But then as soon as she says, she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I love that wonderment in her because she's not afraid to ask the question. So,
no.
But
Let's hope that we never all lose that.
Right. We are, because now it's like, that's what I was talking about the other day. I'm like, parenting. Like, I didn't know what 12 years ago, like how if you had to kind of like work, you have to trial and error things because you couldn't chat GPT. The best thing I could have done 12 years ago was ask Jeeves. That would have been the best thing. And I don't think Ask Jeeves knew squat. Like, he was like, if you asked Jeeves something, it was like there was some dude shaking an 8-ball behind that giving you the answer.
Well, and you're right. Like, I'm thinking about our parents doing that work in the 1990s, where you're right, they didn't have ChatGPT.
Yeah,
and they didn't have these sources of information that we have today.
Okay, I didn't. No, I'm sorry, I didn't see it because I was buying the coffee. Sorry, go
But
ahead.
they were figuring it out on the fly.
Yeah.
Right. And then with that, there's going to be some moments that are going to be great, and there's going to be some moments that are going to be maybe troublesome. Right.
That's right.
And that's kind of how that timeline went.
Yeah. You know, the thing that I liked the most about hanging out with you that was so different was that, like, and you're still this way. I was always, every time I moved somewhere, and I was always beholden to, like, fit in with the crowd and do whatever they were doing. And you held firm to whatever it was you were doing. Like, if you were going to take 9 hours to get ready, you were going to take 9 hours to get ready. But like, like, you didn't bend to what people's expectation or whims were. Like, you had reasons for what you were doing, and you had resolve, and you stuck to it. And that was something, like, I remember the thing that I always said about you to other people was, like, the thing that helped me the most is, like, when we would do homework and you would be like, type a paper out ahead of time, like well before the paper was due. And then you would print it out, and then you would take a pencil and you would edit your own paper. Wow. Like, and I was just like, what is this guy doing? You wait till the night before, then you write it. You don't read it because it's going to be trash. And then you just turn it in. And you're like, no, you write it, and then you print it out, and then you edit it, and then you retype it, and then you do it again. I'm like, what? Like, so I remember some of those things that were skills that I took from you that I think I would never have done what I've done without having some of those early on.
Well, I think some of that came from having a difficult childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned that our parents were figuring out in real time. My dad was figuring out a lot of things about himself.
Yeah.
And trying to raise a son. And then I lose my mom. And that's a difficult moment. And that's where I had to, especially with losing her at about 14, very tragically.
Yeah.
She took her life. I had to kind of figure out things on my own. And that manifested in, I need to learn how to be a good student. I need to have a plan, right, to kind of traverse life and make sure that I'm successful. Because when all that kind of happened, things were left up to me to figure out.
That's great, but I think so many people could have gone the other way. Like, how many people do we know in our lives that had tragedy hit them, and that wasn't their thought, though? So, like, what a blessing that was your thought, because I think so many people, when tragedy hits them, they just curl up. They just curl up, and then they get off track. Whereas your first thought, and I think that's probably a testament to all the work your mom did with you in those first 14 years.
100%, and that helped too. That definitely
because
helped.
So many, like, you think about, and we know people, we won't mention their names, but we know people in our lives that aren't in our lives anymore that probably didn't go the right way.
Those first 14 years, I'm incredibly grateful for that I had her for those years, because to your points, she bought me an encyclopedia set and told me that it's okay to read. It's okay to be smart. It's okay to, like, want to better yourself. So I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome.
A big bookshelf with lots of books on it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm grateful for that. And all those lessons that I was able to get in those 14 years were gifts. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it did, to your point, set me up for when we did get that call that night that happened from the police. And my dad, Papa Smurf, got that information. I saw him slump against the wall, right? And then he looks at me and he's like, I have to tell you something. And he told me not the real story because he's breaking the news to a child, right? But like it's pretty much what happened. And I said, something to the effect of, I'm going to go for a walk. And I walked the streets of Archibald where we were at with the ranch, right? The property, alone that night, moonlit night. And on that walk, I told myself, the rest of the days ahead are going to be up to you. And you are going to have to pull yourself together, be strong, and kind of work your way through life and get above all of this tragedy. Now, bless her soul, because she was wonderful and beautiful, and I wish that she could see this today.
Yeah.
Right? And see where we're at. And so much there, right?
Yeah.
But that night, I kind of had this resolve that, and again, with all due respect to some family in that, they were trying to figure a lot of things out. So I kind of said, you know what, this is going to have to be, I'm going to have to figure out this mission.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of saw some of those characteristics early before, but they got very amplified after.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And you said, you make a good point that when we have tragic moments or pain, we can have a lot of reactions. We could have that path, and I'm grateful that I took that path. But some folks, it's harder. But we also have to have empathy for that too, because some things can bring you down.
Yeah, it was like Robin Williams has that.
Right.
Be kind. Everybody meets fighting a great battle.
People
don't fake. People don't fake being depressed. They fake being happy. You're right. I mean, I think about how powerful, because when a lot of that I didn't know when we were growing up about your mom. I just knew she wasn't around, and I just remember like all the times I would say something involving mom, because like there were always your mom jokes and stuff going around at that time, and I always remember like how I would feel if people said something like gay around me because of my family. I always felt like, oh no, I just said mother around him. Oh my God, I'm gonna bring up a memory from him, because I didn't realize just how strong. Like, you never know what to say around people when you're like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old. And I always remember never wanting to say something stupid or bring something up. But I'm also sad that I never got to meet her, but I'm also grateful because I don't know that I would have met you otherwise.
No, I appreciate all that. And I could tell then that when all that happened, that my friends, you, others, didn't know how to talk to me about that. Who does?
Yeah.
Who does, right? And that was also, oddly, another motivator for me, because you also don't want to be pitied.
Mm-hmm.
So, in part of like being strong and being able to prevail, I kind of worked to strengthen myself as much as I can, so that I could kind of push back against that, and then say to the world, I'm good. So that's where, I'm now exercising and weightlifting to bulk up, right?
Yeah.
I'm reading these pretty difficult books to like feel good and knowledgeable about the world and life, right? And now I'm feeling better as a person, but still more like wounded inside.
Yeah.
But not letting anybody see that, right? And you all, I don't know if you all were able to detect any of that, but you all definitely knew intuitively this is a difficult thing to talk about. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, you held it. I mean, you were so, I would never have known. Like, you just were so strong. I remember the first time you shared it with me, and I was, shocked, with that. And
when was that? I don't remember.
I mean, it was something, you told me it was over AOL, I believe. It was through the chat. But I think that empowered me to then share things and be vulnerable with you, when I was like, oh, I wasn't telling anybody about my mom at that point. Like nobody knew about my family and who they really were. It was just my mom and her friend that I was living with, or my mom and my aunt, or through marriage, because she had a thick Australian accent, so nobody believed she would be biologically her sister. And so that part was like,
Well, that you had two moms.
it let me share that. Yeah, and I've shared that on here a million times. So but like that for me was the first time I was able to tell someone who I really was, or who I really had in my house, or who, and then to then have that in some way reciprocated. I was like, oh my God, this is, for me, that was such a huge moment.
And that probably, I mean, for you, because you're carrying that around, and you're hiding it.
Yeah.
And I was hiding it, and then now we're kind of able to, at least as best as we could at that age, talk about these things. That's a very healing experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Now,
we could all do that more.
Were you hiding it prior to that? So like when you were living with your mom and Kim, was that something that you were sharing when you were younger?
You mean like you, that I had two moms as well? No, I mean in the unfortunately, as we know, in the 1990s, that this was hidden.
Yeah, we had that same
hidden, closeted
yeah.
behavior, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the era of having the Ellen episode where she makes the announcement. And It's a big deal. We didn't make the announcement. No, so up until that point, that was private.
Yeah.
Right.
You just understood. You didn't talk about it.
When you and I had those conversations, I believe you were the first person that I told as well, because I know that we had a shared experience there.
100%.
Right.
I can't remember the exact moment, but I can remember the relief after the moment.
That's right. No, and you know this, you relate to this. I mean, when we're teenagers, and I had this happen, maybe you had this happen, but people in the neighborhood are like, well, where's your dad? You know, you live with two adult women.
Yeah.
and then it leads, and then the next step for children is jokes.
Yeah.
And like a little ridicule and that. So I got that. Like people were starting to detect, but we still kept it. It was still private, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right? Did you get any?
I never felt nobody ever said a word if they did.
So it was just that silence.
It was just the silence of it. And then like, I remember, I think this was like, and Father Rafferty would like pull me aside before theology class. Like they knew like,
okay.
So then he would let me know, like, oh, the next day we're talking about that part of the Bible that's like, a man doesn't lay with a man or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And then like Sister Grace one time showed she showed like the Greg Louganis story for some reason. I think it was a computer class. I'm like, why are we watching the Greg Louganis story? The computers probably were broken.
Class.
They were probably broken. I don't know. Like there's no rhyme or reason to that school. But I remember Lisa, our friend Lisa, and we won't mention her last name, but I remember people making comments, just like whenever there would be an innuendo in the scene of like him being gay, then you would just hear them be like, like they would be like making like, and so like you could just feel that. And then do you remember when you were in Blacksburg, in Virginia? Right, you were by Virginia Tech
for when I undergrad.
For when you were into, was it Radford?
Radford.
Yep. Yeah. So I remember going down there and we wrote the play. I was writing a play and you were helping me with.
I do.
Yeah, and that was me finally processing those feelings
and starting to go more public.
Yeah.
But not fully. But getting more and then but leading to where you're at now.
Now. Yeah, which is great. Like now,
very, very public, very in good humor and
exactly.
And fun.
Oh,
and
dude, it's been Pride Month. I've had so much fun
and
talking about it.
What I really like about your art and what you're doing, you are also like what we're doing right now. You're helping people.
That's the hope, right?
Right. They're laughing, they're having a good time, but they're also like, it's good to hear this.
That's right. That's it.
Because I have this pain, or I'm carrying this with me, and now we're able to talk about it.